Hello everyone, my name is Frosthound and I am a mid-GM Lucio player. This video is going to go over everything I know about Lucio, so we'll be starting with the basics and working up from there. This video is intended to help players of all skill levels, so please let me know how I did, as I don't generally make these types of videos. Up on your screen are timestamps you can use to jump to certain topics I'll be covering if you want to skip ahead to something specific. First on the list is controls and keybinds. One thing I want to knock out before we get started is you do not need super crazy keybinds to effectively use Lucio these days. So if you run with the default control scheme, you're fine. That being said, there is one thing I would recommend adding to your control scheme no matter what it is, and that's having your secondary jump key bound to your scroll wheel. Whether that's scroll wheel up or scroll wheel down, it doesn't matter, whatever is more comfortable for you to use. I'll go into why this is important a little bit later. There are Lucio-specific options as well. The first one we're going to look at is Allow Backwards Wall Riding. It does what it says it does and allows you to connect to the wall even if it's behind you. This is really the only option you 100% need to have on, as it greatly increases your ability to wall ride. The second option is Hold to Crossfade. What this does is it sets your default aura to healing, and you have to press and hold your crossfade key in order to be on speed. The reason this is good is it bypasses stuns, so take a Reinhardt Shatter for example. If you get shattered, you will automatically default to your healing aura because the game thinks you let go of the crossfade key. Personally, I never could get used to this, so I tend to keep it off. Next on the list is movement. I'm assuming you already know how the wall riding mechanic works, so I'm not going to go into great detail on that. Instead, I'm going to focus on lesser known tips for wall riding. But before I do that, now is a good time to explain why we want to bind our secondary jump key to the scroll wheel. By using the scroll wheel to burst spam inputs before you connect to a wall, during the wall ride and after you jump off, you decrease the total amount of time you stick to the wall. This is called wall skimming, and it's the fastest way to gain speed. You might be asking, when should I use the scroll wheel versus my normal jump command? Generally, you'll want to use the scroll wheel if you need to cover a large distance fast, and your normal jump button for more controlled wall riding, such as stalling a point. A good thing to keep in mind when you're wall skimming is to never touch the A and D keys when you need to go fast. Pressing A or D when you are trying to gain speed is going to kill your forward momentum and make things feel super awkward and clunky. You should simply be pressing W and using your mouse to control where you want to go. One interesting thing to note about using your mouse to control direction is it also controls how much height you get when jumping off a wall. By looking up when you jump off a wall, you will go higher, and by looking down when you jump off a wall, you will stay low. You can abuse this for many different types of rollouts, and it's really good knowledge to have when you need to stall a point. In the clip I'm showing you now, I'm doing the exact same rollout twice, but with only one minor change. The first rollout will have me looking upwards, and the second rollout will have me looking downwards. You can really see the difference. The rollout I'm showing you now, while not very optimal in-game, is a good example of what can be done when you master what I just talked about. Another good thing to know is how to late jump. Late jumping is pressing your jump key the split second you wall ride off a wall normally. Timing this correctly will give you a jump even in midair, so this is useful if you need to cover more distance off of a single jump. Keep in mind, with the way wall riding works now, you have about 3/4 of a second before you start to automatically wrap around corners, so the timing for late jumping is even more difficult. Let's talk about some of the more interesting properties that Lucio's abilities have. Starting with his aura, or crossfade radius. Did you know that if someone leaves your radius, they will still receive the benefits of whatever aura you are currently on for a total of 3 seconds before they lose it? Keep in mind, if you change your aura while someone is in this 3-second grace period, they will instantly lose whatever buff you were providing them before and not receive the new aura buff. Lucio's aura is spread out over a 12-meter radius, however his ultimate has a 30-meter radius. Make sure you're using this to save allies at a farther distance. Speaking of his ultimate, Sound Barrier has a similar grace period like your normal crossfade radius. When you're using your ultimate, there's a split second of time where you can wrap around a corner and apply any teammates who were previously out of your line of sight. This grace period is much shorter than your aura, so you need to act fast. Something I do often when fighting a hero like Winston is to pop Sound Barrier inside his bubble if my teammates are fighting in it, and then quickly slide out of the bubble towards the rest of my team so they get the effects of Sound Barrier as well. One last thing before we move on, Lucio is capable of dishing out 215 HP worth of damage in a quick burst. If you land 4 headshots, boop, then melee, you will do exactly 215 damage provided the target does not have armor. Just remember, it's important to boop it before you melee, as doing it the other way is much slower. And last but not least, let's cover how you should play Lucio in a team and answer some questions I get asked frequently. As Lucio, it is your job to make sure your tanks and your supports get in and out of where they need to be quickly with little interference. When you have a Reinhardt on your team, your primary goal is to get him into the fray as quickly as possible, preventing the enemy from escaping, all the while keeping an eye on your backline to make sure they aren't being harassed by a flanker. A question I get asked a lot is, how do I know when to use what aura? The keywords you are looking for are enemy point presence. If the enemy has point presence and you need to take that away from them, you should primarily be using speed aura. If you have point presence and you need to defend it, you should primarily be using healing aura. Obviously, there are exceptions to this rule, but this should get you in the right mindset. Another question I get asked is, when should I use amp? Amp is used as an engagement/peeling tool when you need to amp speed, and a sustain tool when you need to amp heals. Whenever you amp speed, you should always call that out beforehand so your tanks are ready to make use of it. Amping heals is best done when you are in a close quarter team fight and you don't have to worry about chasing someone with high mobility. And that's about it for me. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you learned something from this.